Hi, this is Doug DeVitri, speaker, consultant, and author of Screen to Screen Selling, published October of last year, 2015, by McGraw-Hill Education. Thanks for watching this video. Rather than share with you me on the stage and getting people excited and running up and down and recording videos of one another and getting excited, I wanted to use this opportunity to deliver immediate value, some items you can take away right after watching this video. And as a result, you'll either be able to increase revenues, reduce costs, or increase the engagement you have with your members in a new and exciting way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into it right here. Now, what's been great about, since I started as a professional speaker back in 2008 is that I attended Rapid. Rapid was so good to me in 2009, 10, 11, and then I disappeared for a while. Well, that's because I've retooled and I've offered new services and value that you just can't find in most places. So here we go. This is an example of a business model for an association. Now, you look at your strategic plan. That's what obviously the leadership kind of creates with the facilitator. It's something that I've helped in the past and have endorsements to be able to support it. But this is different. This is a business model that talks about revenue. It also talks about expenses. It talks about what the value propositions are. Now, we're going to dive down deep so you kind of have an idea. Now, this is an app that you can download onto your iPad. It's also available online. Ask me at the session, or phone me, email me, and I'll give you all these apps that I'm kind of mentioned in this video. Now, your customer segments are your members or your membership segments. We have brokers. How many brokers are part of your association? And obviously that number changes. Salespersons. So maybe if you go down deeper, you could figure out commercial, appraisal, international. What's a good idea to actually, right here you see where there's a 0, you actually want to plug a number into each one of these, because that way when we start to figure out the potential revenue streams that are available, then we have an actual dollar amount, right? So if you have 2,000 members and then you have them taking a course, let's say it's just CE times how many times they're gonna, what the cost of the course is, times how many times you offer it per year, times what percentage of the members are actually going to attend. Maybe it's only 10%. You have a specific revenue amount that's allocated towards that specific customer segment and revenue stream. So rather than kind of going too far into it, I'm going to keep moving on so you can kind of see the big picture here. Now, in the middle are the specific value propositions, or what is the actual association selling or delivering to members. And a lot of times what the association thinks isn't necessarily what the member wants. So as long as we're clear on what that value proposition is, we can then start to create and articulate our marketing in a way that makes sense to the member. And so then when they see it, they're saying, wow, that's what I specifically want. Now, here's the one that we always run into an issue, is continuing education, right? Well, when you ask a group, let's say there's 100 people in the room, and say, how many are here just for the CE? Probably 75% of them would raise their hand. Well, you're not selling education, you're selling compliance. They're there because they have to, not because they're there to improve, let's say, their sales productivity and so forth. So as long as we're clear on what the value proposition is, we're not delusional in terms of what we have versus what the member wants. And then if we look at, professional development or sales productivity, maybe we can charge a little bit more. And we'll get into the marketing side, but what I want to do is focus here on the revenue streams. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can attract more revenue without doing more work or without using more resources in order to provide this type of value. So we can get really specific. I've used this model with a number of different associations. One state association was trying to decide, do I get into the pre-license market or not? Well, we did this exercise with a work group. It was a year and a half they were trying to decide, do we do this or not? And then within 2 hours of a facilitation, through input of the work group, it was determined there was a $1.4 million loss in the first year. Well, obviously that was a no-go. Well, how we were able to calculate that was just by plugging in kind of the data that we've been talking about specifically. So this is kind of a model or a tool for you to be able to use at any different point. And really what it'll help you do is kind of create your budget maybe for next year. So then that way, when you start to allocate some of your resources, you're being very specific and intentional rather than subjective thinking, oh, you know what, I think this might work. Or, you know what, this is something I see somebody else doing that we might try. But without actually doing this type of exercise, then you're kind of just shooting in the dark. Another process that you can walk your association through is what's called the membership journey map. Now this is a completed one right here. You can see that, and I'll actually go through this as a process, and then I'll kind of show you what the blank one looks like. So then that way, when you meet with your professional development committee, you can figure out, well, gosh, how do I do what I'm doing just maybe better or faster? Or maybe how do I maintain the same amount of registrations and revenue, but then also don't have to work so hard to be able to do that? So right here at the top, I have value proposition, and it's education or professional development. Now there's 4 stages to look at. We'll talk about each one of these specifically. First is awareness. Now, typically awareness gets pushed off onto marketing or communications. We've got a registration link or we have a flyer. Well, how do we get out to as many people as possible? Do we send them more emails and more emails and more emails? Do we pick up the phone and call? Do we have it doing through a website? Do we do social media 100 different times in 100 different ways? The problem with doing all of the different options is, and really being subjective about it without any data, you're kind of shooting in the dark. So what we do is we actually look from empirical evidence or data to be able to support the decisions, which typically involves asking IT or communications, hey, what's the open rates? What's the click rates? How many of these are we sending out? What's the engagement like? What's the sentiment like? And so forth. So obviously we can go down deeper, but now is not the time. Now, conversion is different from awareness. We get everybody to understand what it is, but if people don't act on it, then what? We've got a bunch of empty chairs. Nobody's taking action. Then there's the side of adoption. Let's say we have 100 people sign up for the webinar, that you've actually converted them from being aware of the webinar, converted them to sign up. So there's 100 people, but then only 50 people show up. Adoption is the 50 people who showed up. Well, what about the other 50 people? Well, we could say, maybe the members, they ran out of time, or maybe it wasn't a priority. Maybe they had schedules that are conflicting schedules that maybe have changed. Well, rather than blame the member, what we can do is take responsibility for it and increase the adoption rate, but just by adding in some additional features to our marketing campaign. Lastly, we have ROI. What did the member actually implement that contributes to a result? So if the value proposition, let's say, is sales productivity, were they able to increase the number of units by X? Were they able to reduce their costs, which increases their profitability as a result? So many times, what's a lost opportunity is that the association does not extract the language from the member after the course to be able to feed back in through to marketing. So there's a variety of different ways that you can do that, and there's different channels. As I went from the easy, the simple, to the complex, you probably had to spin and say, gosh, I don't even know where to start. And that's where I come in, is by facilitating a process through, it's either working with leadership or maybe it's working with your internal staff. I do not have all of the answers, but I do have a lot of good questions and do a lot of research to make sure that when it comes time to have our meeting that we do ask a lot of questions. So here's what I would do is open it up to you or invite you to participate. We can have a conversation while we're at Rapid or afterwards. Afterwards it's not going to be over the phone, or we could have it over the phone, but with the technology we have today, I can now see you face to face. We can have a fun conversation, and then when you ask a specific question about revenue or maybe options or maybe cost savings, or maybe marketing team isn't working with us, how can we do what we're doing but just better? I can get into the screen share and then give you the questions to ask the people on your team, or maybe give you the questions to start to ask your committee, or maybe give you the process or the templates so that when you do start to have these discussions, you're not over here, and you're not over here, and you're not over here. You guys are working on one page, one direction, one association. It's called mental synchronicity when you're using visuals with conversations. That's why teleconference and phone conferences don't always work. So I look forward to seeing you at Rapid, and if not, don't have the opportunity to catch up then, we'll definitely have to meet screen to screen.